Ladies and gentlemen, when we think of family, we often picture love, support, and safety, a haven from the chaos of the outside world. But today I want to challenge that comforting notion. I want to explore an uncomfortable truth that family can also be the most dangerous force in a person's life. This is not to say that all families are harmful, far from it, but the unique emotional bonds, power dynamics, and societal expectations within families can make them the breeding ground for some of the deepest wounds a person can suffer. One of the most profound reasons why family can be the most dangerous is because of the deep emotional power it holds over us. Unlike any other relationship in life, the family connection begins before we can even form memories or establish a sense of self. From our earliest days, family members, especially parents and guardians, shape how we see the world, how we interpret love, trust, and safety, and even how we value ourselves. This influence is not surface level. It's imprinted in the subconscious, the words spoken to us as children, the way we're treated, the affection we're given or denied, all become part of our internal blueprint. And because of this deep imprinting, family has the power not only to guide and nurture, but also to manipulate, invalidate, or even destroy a person's sense of worth and identity. The emotional power of family is dangerous because it makes us vulnerable in ways we are often unaware of until it's too late. A criticism from a stranger might sting, but the same words from a parent can leave a lasting emotional scar. A betrayal from a friend may hurt, but betrayal from a sibling or caregiver can fracture our sense of safety and belonging. Family members often know our insecurities, our triggers, our histories, and when that knowledge is used to control, shame, or gaslight us, the damage can be more complex and long-lasting than any external conflict. What makes this emotional power especially insidious is that it's usually wrapped in the language of love. Hurtful actions are dismissed as just how our family communicates, or they didn't mean it that way, or it's only because they love you. Over time, we may begin to question our own instincts, to suppress our pain, and to normalize behavior that, in any other context, we would recognize as abusive or toxic. Furthermore, this emotional entanglement often makes it incredibly hard to set boundaries. Saying no to a friend or coworker can be straightforward. Saying no to a parent, even as an adult, can unleash a wave of guilt, shame, and emotional retaliation. We are taught implicitly and explicitly that family deserves special access to our lives and emotions, regardless of how they treat us. This belief makes it extremely difficult to recognize when a line has been crossed, and even harder to defend ourselves when it has. In this way, the emotional power of family is a double-edged sword. It can be the source of our greatest strength and stability, or it can become a tool for manipulation, dependency, and long-term psychological harm. This is why recognizing the emotional weight family carries is not just important, it is essential for understanding how even the closest relationships can become dangerous when trust is broken or power is misused. Abuse within families is often one of the most difficult forms of harm to identify, confront, and escape from, not because it is rare, but because it is deeply hidden behind the facade of what a family is supposed to be. When we think of abuse, we often picture visible scars or overt aggression, but in many families, the most devastating damage occurs in the shadows, through manipulation, neglect, verbal degradation, psychological control, or emotional abandonment. The term hidden abuse reflects more than just secrecy. It describes a type of harm that is normalized, justified, or ignored, both within the family and by society at large. Parents who berate their children daily may be viewed by others as strict or disciplinarians. Siblings who bully or intimidate may be dismissed with, "That's just sibling rivalry." A partner who gaslights their spouse into doubting their own reality may be seen as simply going through a rough patch. This minimization of abuse is deeply rooted in the belief that family is sacred and therefore beyond scrutiny. The private nature of family life compounds the issue. Most abusive behavior within the home is invisible to outsiders. It happens behind closed doors, in spaces where victims often feel trapped, physically, emotionally, and financially. Unlike public forms of harm that draw attention and intervention, familial abuse is often concealed under layers of secrecy, shame, and fear. Victims may hesitate to speak out because they fear no one will believe them, or worse, that they'll be blamed for disrupting the family image. Children are especially vulnerable in this dynamic. When abuse happens in childhood, whether it's emotional neglect, physical punishment, sexual exploitation, or consistent belittlement, the child often lacks the language or perspective to recognize that what they're experiencing is wrong. They internalize it instead. They grow up believing that this is what love looks like, or that they somehow deserve the pain they're enduring. These early experiences often set the stage for unhealthy relationships in adulthood as the trauma remains unaddressed. What makes hidden abuse even more dangerous is the code of silence that surrounds it. Family members may be aware of what's happening, but choose to look the other way out of fear, denial, or allegiance to the abuser. Don't air dirty laundry, family comes first, or it's not my place to interfere are phrases that contribute to a culture where victims are isolated and abuse continues unchecked. In this environment, speaking out is not just discouraged, it is often punished either directly or through subtle forms of emotional exile. Furthermore, hidden abuse is not limited to lower earning families or visibly troubled families. It occurs in wealthy families, religious households, high achieving communities, in places where the social image of the family is pristine and polished. In fact, the pressure to maintain a perfect exterior can intensify the abuse, as victims are expected to remain silent to protect the family's reputation. This leads to a painful paradox. The more respectable the family appears, the less likely its victims are to be heard or helped. In essence, hidden abuse is a silent epidemic, one that thrives in environments where loyalty is demanded, appearances are prioritized, and harm is dismissed as love in disguise. It is a form of violence made more potent by its invisibility, more enduring by its emotional entanglement, and more tragic by the fact that it so often goes unspoken. One of the most insidious dynamics that can exist within a family is the use of manipulation and control, tactics that often masquerade as love, protection, or discipline. Unlike more overt forms of abuse, manipulation is often subtle, psychological, and deeply woven into everyday interactions. This makes it especially dangerous because it doesn't just affect what someone does, it affects how they think, feel, and view themselves. Family-based manipulation often starts in childhood when children are most impressionable and dependent. Parents or guardians may frame their dominance as knowing what's best, even when their decisions suppress individuality or enforce obedience through fear and guilt. Children raised in such environments learn to prioritize the parents' needs, emotions, or expectations over their own. This lays the groundwork for self-doubt, people-pleasing, and a distorted sense of identity where the child exists to fulfill a role, not to become a fully formed individual. Control can come in many forms: emotional, financial, psychological, even spiritual. A controlling parent might withhold affection until the child behaves exactly as expected, creating a toxic link between love and compliance. In some cases, love becomes conditional and autonomy is seen as rebellion. The message, whether spoken or implied, is clear. You are only worthy if you do what I say, believe what I believe, and live how I want you to live. Over time, this teaches family members to suppress their own values, emotions, and desires, not because they don't exist, but because expressing them leads to rejection or conflict. One common tactic of manipulation within families is guilt tripping. Statements like, "After everything I've done for you," or "You're breaking your mother's heart," are not just expressions of hurt. They are designed to control behavior by inducing shame and obligation. This form of control can be incredibly powerful because it plays on the innate human need for love and belonging, especially within one's family. People often find themselves making decisions not based on what is right for them, but on what will keep them from being guilted, shamed, or cast out by their relatives. Another powerful form of control is emotional invalidation, where family members downplay or dismiss each other's feelings, often in the name of tough love or just being honest. When someone is constantly told they're too sensitive, overreacting, or imagining things, it becomes difficult to trust their own emotions and instincts. This erosion of self-trust is a common outcome of long-term manipulation, leaving individuals dependent on the very people who undermine them. Manipulation within the family doesn't always come from parents. It can be perpetuated by siblings, extended relatives, or even adult children. Siblings might engage in triangulation, turning one family member against another to maintain control or superiority. Spouses may use emotional blackmail, threatening withdrawal, shame, or punishment to get their way. Grandparents or elders might use tradition and cultural expectations as tools of coercion, especially in communities where obedience to family hierarchy is heavily enforced. This control often continues well into adulthood. Many people find themselves unable to make life decisions about careers, partners, religion, or personal boundaries without anticipating backlash from their families. The fear of disappointing a parent or being labeled ungrateful keeps many trapped in cycles of compliance, even when the cost is their happiness, freedom, or mental health. Perhaps what makes familial manipulation so dangerous is that it is rarely recognized for what it is. Because it often comes from people who love us, we're taught to overlook the control and reinterpret it as care. We rationalize the harm, excuse the behavior, and internalize the belief that sacrifice is the price we must pay for family loyalty. One of the most damaging forces within a toxic family dynamic is the culture of silencing and stigma. The unspoken but deeply enforced rule that certain things must never be said, even when those things are causing harm. This silence isn't just a lack of speech, it's a powerful tool used to control narratives, suppress truth, and preserve the illusion that the family is healthy, functional, and united. From a young age, many individuals are taught that loyalty to family means not speaking out, especially when it comes to problems that reflect poorly on the household. Phrases like, "Don't air our dirty laundry," "What happens in this house stays in this house," or "It's disrespectful to talk about your parents that way," are repeated so often that they become internalized beliefs. These statements aren't just about privacy. They are mechanisms to protect the reputation of the family at the expense of the individual's truth. This culture of silence creates a taboo around pain. Victims of abuse, neglect, or dysfunction may be surrounded by people who witness their suffering but refuse to acknowledge it, or worse, minimize or deny it altogether. When someone tries to speak up, they are often met not with support but with accusations of betrayal. They're told they're exaggerating, being ungrateful, or just trying to start drama. In such an environment, the victim becomes isolated, not only by the original harm, but by the rejection that follows their attempt to be honest about it. The emotional consequence of this silencing is profound. People begin to question their own experiences, wondering if they are overreacting or misremembering. They may bury their pain in order to remain accepted by the family, especially when speaking up results in emotional punishment, being ignored, scapegoated, gaslit, or turned into the problem child or troublemaker. These reactions train individuals to stay quiet, to tolerate mistreatment, and to prioritize family harmony over their own mental and emotional well-being. Stigma further complicates this issue by attaching shame and judgment to those who try to break free from harmful patterns. Society often romanticizes the idea of the tight-knit family and demonizes those who break away as cold, selfish, or disloyal. When someone distances themselves from a parent, cuts ties with a sibling, or chooses not to return home, they are often met with confusion, blame, or unsolicited advice to make peace or forgive and forget. Rarely does society ask what drove that decision in the first place. Instead, the individual is labeled, judged, and burdened with the guilt of having defied the sacred ideal of family unity. This stigma also prevents many people from seeking help. Admitting that your greatest source of pain comes from your own family can feel like a betrayal, not just to the family itself, but to cultural or religious values that place family above all else. In some communities, the stigma is intensified by expectations of obedience, tradition, and honor. People may stay in abusive situations simply because leaving would mean dishonoring their parents, disgracing their family name, or being shunned by their community. Silencing and stigma work hand in hand to ensure that toxic patterns continue unchallenged, sometimes for generations. The silence protects the abuser. The stigma isolates the victim. And over time, this creates a family system where dysfunction is not only tolerated, but normalized, passed down like an inheritance, with no one willing or allowed to speak the truth. The idea that family is sacred, untouchable, and permanent is one of the most deeply rooted beliefs across nearly every culture. While this notion can create a sense of unity and loyalty, it also gives rise to immense cultural and societal pressure that can prevent people from recognizing harm, setting boundaries, or leaving toxic situations. This pressure doesn't just come from inside the family unit, it is reinforced by the broader society through tradition, religion, media, and communal expectations. In many cultures, family is not simply seen as important, it is everything. It is the core of identity, the measure of morality, and the backbone of honor. Family roles are often rigidly defined. Parents must be obeyed without question, elders must be respected no matter what, and the family name must be protected at all costs. Within these frameworks, speaking up about abuse or dysfunction is not seen as courageous, it is seen as shameful, disrespectful, or even treacherous. The idea of duty to family becomes a kind of emotional debt that never gets paid off. Children are expected to sacrifice their individuality, desires, and sometimes their safety in order to preserve the family structure. Adult children are told to take care of toxic parents, regardless of the damage those parents may have caused. People are expected to show up for holidays, weddings, funerals, and obligations with smiles on their faces, even if being in that room means re-traumatizing themselves. In many societies, not showing up isn't a healthy boundary, it's a betrayal. Religious teachings often amplify this burden. Many faiths emphasize the command to honor one's mother and father, to forgive endlessly, and to maintain peace in the family. While these values can be beautiful in healthy environments, they become dangerous in abusive or toxic ones. Forgiveness is weaponized. Endurance is mistaken for virtue. Silence is demanded in the name of harmony. People are left feeling that their suffering is a spiritual failure and that their attempts to protect themselves are sinful or selfish. The media also plays a powerful role in reinforcing this pressure. Television, films, and books overwhelmingly portray families as ultimately loving, supportive, and redemptive. Even if they argue or fight, there's always a holiday reconciliation, a heartfelt apology, or a realization that family is all that matters. Rarely do we see characters who make the painful decision to walk away and never look back. And if we do, they're often portrayed as cold or misguided. This storytelling reinforces the belief that no matter how bad it gets, you're supposed to stay. Even in mental health conversations, there's often hesitation to fully confront the reality of familial harm. Therapists may tread lightly when clients express resentment or anger toward parents or siblings. Friends and acquaintances, even well-meaning ones, may respond with, "But they're still your family," or "You only get one mom." These statements may sound benign on the surface, but they echo the cultural belief that family loyalty should override personal truth. As a result, many people stay silent about their pain, fearing they won't be understood, supported, or believed. In communities where reputation is paramount, individuals may be actively discouraged from seeking help, especially if it might expose family issues to outsiders. Going to therapy, speaking to a counselor, or even confiding in a friend can be seen as disloyal or disgraceful. Victims are made to feel that protecting the family image is more important than protecting their own mental health. Ultimately, cultural and societal pressure doesn't just encourage people to tolerate harm, it often teaches them to doubt their right to resist it. It tells them that leaving a toxic family situation means they are selfish, that setting boundaries is disrespectful, that seeking peace away from family means they are ungrateful or broken. And in doing so, it ensures that generations of pain continue uninterrupted in silence, perhaps one of the most emotionally complex and psychologically exhausting aspects of family. And why it can become the most dangerous is the feeling of inescapability. Unlike friends, co-workers, or even romantic partners, family is not chosen. It is inherited. It is rooted in blood, history, shared homes, and formative years. This sense of permanence, that no matter what happens, they are still your family, creates a web of obligation, guilt, fear, and emotional entrapment that can be incredibly difficult to break free from, even in the face of real harm. These ties are deeply embedded in language, law, culture, and tradition. From birth, society reinforces the idea that your family is forever, that your bond with your parents, siblings, and relatives is fixed and sacred. Blood is thicker than water, family first. You only get one mother. These sayings aren't just cliches. They are powerful emotional codes that shape how we think about loyalty, identity, and belonging. They imply that to turn away from family for any reason is unnatural, dishonorable, or cruel. This mindset becomes especially dangerous when family members are abusive, manipulative, or toxic. Victims often find themselves trapped in cycles of harm simply because the alternative, leaving, feels impossible. The idea of cutting contact or setting firm boundaries can provoke immense internal conflict. Many people fear not only the reaction of the family itself, but also the judgment of others. Friends who might not understand, community members who whisper, or extended relatives who take sides. In some cultures, estrangement is not just frowned upon, it is seen as a disgrace, one that can bring shame upon generations. These Inescapable ties are also reinforced by shared histories. No one else knows your childhood like your family does. No one else remembers the holidays, the private jokes, the old photographs, or the smell of the house you grew up in. These memories create an emotional gravity that can pull people back into relationships, even when they are no longer safe or healthy. Nostalgia and sentimentality become powerful forces that blur the lines between what was meaningful and what was harmful. Financial dependence is another tether that makes family feel impossible to escape. Many people, especially young adults or those in cultures with multi-generational households, may rely on their families for housing, education, or support. This financial bond can be used as leverage to control behavior or limit autonomy. As long as you live under this roof becomes not just a statement, but a threat. Leaving may mean losing security, shelter, or access to basic needs, and for some, that's simply not an option. Even after physical separation, emotional chains remain. Family members may continue to assert themselves through guilt, gossip, emotional blackmail, or unexpected reappearances. A toxic parent might reach out just to say, "I still think about you every day," planting seeds of doubt and confusion. A relative might message during the holidays, reminding you of the good times while ignoring the years of neglect or pain. These small acts often carry a larger message. You can never fully leave, no matter how far you go. The concept of inescapable ties also applies to inner psychological landscapes. Many people carry their family within them long after contact has been cut. They hear their parents' voices in their heads. They replay old arguments. They internalize criticism that was drilled into them as children. This internalized family mix of memories, voices, traumas, and expectations becomes a kind of mental cage that follows them into adulthood, relationships, workplaces, and even parenthood. And because these ties are invisible, others may not understand why someone is still affected by their family years after cutting contact. Outsiders may ask, "Why don't you just move on?" Or, "It's been so long, can't you forgive?" But the reality is that family pain isn't just about people. It's about roots, identity, and the primal need to be loved and accepted by those who created you. When that love is warped, withheld, or weaponized, the impact doesn't disappear with distance. It lingers in the background, shaping how one views safety, trust, and love itself. While family is often portrayed as the ultimate source of love, protection, and belonging, it is crucial to recognize that not all families live up to that ideal. In fact, the very closeness and power that make family bonds so meaningful also make them uniquely capable of inflicting deep, lasting harm. The danger lies in the unquestioned loyalty, the silence enforced by stigma, the manipulation masked as love, and the inescapable ties that keep people tethered to pain in the name of tradition. To challenge the idea that family is always safe is not to disrespect the concept of family. It is to respect truth, protect well-being, and advocate for the right to choose peace over proximity. We must allow room in our conversations, our cultures, and our compassion for those whose greatest wounds were not inflicted by strangers, but by those who were supposed to love them most. Healing begins with honesty, and sometimes the bravest act of self-love is recognizing that walking away from a dangerous family is not betrayal, it is survival.